This podcast is sponsored by Xgrowth. Xgrowth is the APAC ABM agency. If you and your organization are looking to land and expand enterprise and mid-market deals, Xgrowth is the agency to help. Xgrowth works with a wide range of international and global technology vendors, service providers, and B2B SaaS companies. If this sounds like something you're interested to know more about, make sure to check out Xgrowth at xgrowth.com.au. That's xgrowth.com.au and chat with the APAC ABM agency.
What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shaheen Hodha with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Matt Hogan, VP of Growth Marketing at HG Insight, about the different levels of targeting and personalization you can get for your next ABM campaign or campaigns in general. I know a lot of people here listen and they're targeting higher end of the market, but really we're going to be exploring a wide range of tactics and also how you can map out the entirety of the market. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Matt, thanks a lot for jumping on.
You bet. Thanks for picking me. I'm excited to talk about it and break down that title because I think a lot of that can be intimidating. And so my goal would be to give anybody in any role, any level, just some confidence that they can go start, being effective immediately.
I love it. Let's do it. So I think a good place to start is to talk about some of the traditional data points, because let's talk about targeting, right? Targeting and personalization really originates from the data points that one has or an organization has. What has been the traditional data points that organizations use for their targeting criteria that you come across?
There's a couple categories, and I really break it down into I kind of like 6 categories. So there's what's historically always been the case, right? Which is firmographic data, where the company's based, what industry they're in, and that was really invented by D&B. 25 years ago, you had to go in the yellow pages still, right? Like it's this stuff isn't that old. The second category would be contact data. That again, that's even newer, right? And you think about contact data, like that is the easiest thing to find, but that's, finding titles, roles, right? Personas. And that's really been made possible by LinkedIn, right? The making public of what people do. Again, so something that's about 15 years old. And then the next category is behavioral. So what they do on your website or what content they engage in or where they are in your funnel. So to me, the 3 kind of traditional historical would be firmographic, contact, and behavioral. So firmographic made possible by D&B, contact really coming through with LinkedIn, and then behavioral becoming possible through really the invention of marketing automation tools. And then there's become a new wave, right? The new wave to me is really exciting. And that's, I think, the first one, which HG kind of plays in and was one of the original providers, which is technographic data. It's now evolved to technology intelligence, where you have spend data, so if you can find out how much a company spends on products. Then you've got intent data, right? That's another kind of new wave option for people to consider. That's, again, hasn't been around for very long, and that's really trumpeted by the Bomboras of the world. And then the last one, which is a company I came from, is really around cloud consumption. So that's a really unique option as well to consider. And so those would be the categories that I think about. And then there's kind of a best practice of how you'd go dissecting what's relevant to your market.
Maybe, when we're talking about these 6, can we dive a little bit deeper into give a little bit of an I know technographic and technology intelligence, that's very interesting. Intent data, Cloud consumption, can you give a little bit of a description around that as well?
Oh yeah, so cloud consumption data. So this is pretty cool. So again, like there's just with the innovation that's happening in the tech space, it follows that trend. And so what cloud consumption data that Intricately really pioneered, which was a company where I was the first employee, what we did is we analyzed how digital products were being consumed by companies and then overlaid the traffic and geography of how those products were consumed. So if you think about it, I have a business that's based in California. If I have customers in Europe, right, Intricately is able to triangulate that and say, hey, this company has traffic originating in Europe and therefore it's being consumed, and then able to connect the dots and say, hey, they are consuming AWS, right? They're consuming a Equinix data center or, you name it product. So it's really, really cool stuff.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. My next question was going to be about what are some of the modern capabilities that have kind of surfaced for targeting personalization. You definitely touched on the technology intelligence, the intent data, and also cloud consumption. I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about cloud intelligence. You talked about how it was technographic data and has now progressed to technology intelligence. Can we unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. And so I think where I'd start is kind of explaining how to think about personalization. So, as a salesperson, you might be thinking, oh, I need to go personalize it based on their LinkedIn. That is true, but personalization at scale becomes a big challenge. And so the way that I recommend companies think about it is kind of almost like peeling back the onion, in that you can personalize in its broadest sense from an industry perspective. The next layer would be from a company level, right? Okay, we're going to target the security industry, so we can speak about security challenges. Then we want to target a security company. Then you could get into the persona. Okay, we want to target marketers there. And then the person. Cloud intelligence brings an entirely different layer in that if I sell a product that integrates with AWS, integrates with Salesforce, I can now target companies based on what they're consuming, right? It adds another layer to that. And that scales, right? That's kind of higher up in the food chain. So it's easier to do personalized campaigns to a broader audience, right? One of the challenges I see folks run into launching ABM, right, is it's just intimidating, right? You see these beautiful marketing examples and it's like, yeah, we say, hey, Matt, on the website, and we're excited that HG is viewing it. That stuff's just really hard to do, right? It's really hard to do. I think customers I've talked to, right, the top performing, they might be able to manage 100 unique campaigns at once. So you have to think in broader strokes. And so if you're in the kind of tech world, technology intelligence or cloud intelligence, we call it, gives you a whole nother layer to paint a broad stroke, right? Where you could target businesses based on the product they're consuming, assuming that fits into your ideal customer profile.
Love it. I love it. And obviously this can be very effective for organizations, especially with go-to-market planning. And I can kind of see this with expansion into new geographies. Have you seen this kind of data used for that kind of activities?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the exciting things that I think it does is it gives you an opportunity to rethink your ideal customer profile. And that is really foundational for your ability to plan your go-to-market and to evaluate other markets. And so what I mean by rethink, I'll talk to a company, they'll be like, okay, tell me your ICP. And they go, we target companies 1,000 employees and up. They're in the software space and they have DevOps at their company. It's like, okay, let's set that aside. Let's set that aside. Let's talk about, how do people use your product? Okay, well, actually, we are a solution that integrates with Amazon and integrates with your Snowflake database, and it helps push code XYZ. We go, okay, great. Let's draw a profile around that. So instead of using your historical kind of firmographic, we go, hey, let's paint a profile of companies that are spending $5,000 a month on Amazon. They're investing in DevOps tools that helps them manage code. They're investing in data warehouses and machine learning apps that shows some maturity and knowledge at the company. Now, all of a sudden, you've painted a new profile that is very unique, right? And that spans industries. You're no longer locked into a traditional industry, right? And you think about just, again, back on the innovation, right? There's, SaaS products for any type of industry, healthcare, fintech, you name it, right? And traditional data sets kind of box you in. So by taking a slightly different approach, your TAM gets a lot bigger. And so, number one, it's a tremendous enhancement to your ability to be targeted and be more successful when marketing, particularly ABM. But if you think about expanding into new markets, where business data is there's just way less integrity, right? Like, the US with DNB, right? There's a lot more organization around SIC codes and publicly traded companies. Business data is easy to find. But the second you get out of kind of the main commercial countries, it's not as well organized. So it becomes harder to spot companies. But if you look at it from a tech adoption or a cloud consumption standpoint, your TAM expands, right? There's nothing stopping somebody from turning on a website, firing up an AWS server and building an application, right? And so through those data solutions, you can target them. You can find them. Maybe they're not registered in some registrar, whatever that may be. Maybe they're not even on LinkedIn, right? Like not every country, every culture uses LinkedIn. So it really opens up your aperture.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I mean, you're right. We were talking about this to somebody about Japan, of how underutilized LinkedIn is and how useless not useless, but it's just you can't really use it to the full potential. And leveraging that kind of data could be absolutely amazing. And I would imagine we have a lot of people from the APAC region, or people that might be looking at expanding into APAC, and how that data could be heavily leveraged in order to map out the way that one would approach the market. Do you find that in expanding to new markets, that's definitely like one of the criteria of like, hey, where are we going to put our head office, or where are we going to open up an office in the region? Is that the kind of data that you see people take leverage of?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so challenging, right? If you're a company based in Australia and you go, okay, how are we going to sell into the broader APAC market? Or if you're a US based company and you need to go decide if you want to expand in APAC, like you said, the Japan, the cultural difference, the LinkedIn adoption, that's headwinds. And we all know the market's big, right? We know the market in Singapore is big. We know the market in Australia is big. But how do you go make a data-driven approach to your go-to-market there? How do you go find the target accounts and even build an ABM? That's where this new data helps you, right? You can start to look at companies based on their cloud presence, right? Which is publicly available information. And all that's required to identify it is a domain, right? So I think it's really eye-opening. I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of big, public companies here in the US that pose that question, right? Hey, we are opening an office in Singapore. We want to have a center of excellence for the APAC region. And we need to understand, how big is our market in Australia? How big is our market in India? How big is it in China? And we can't do it with traditional data. We can't do it with LinkedIn. Where do we go? And so we would step back again, we'd go through the ICP, and then we'd go map it, right? It was just really creative, honestly, a creative exercise.
Love it. Okay. Matt, I think the other question that I want to ask you is, when we're talking about data and segmentation and all that stuff, one of the things that happens, and you've touched on this as well, is it's super easy to get overwhelmed. It's like, what am I going to do with all these data points? Like, how am I going to leverage this? Do you have any advice for marketers who are kind of looking at these sheets and sheets of data, and they're like, where do I start? How do I get results out of this? And kind of feeling overwhelmed with it?
Yeah, it is very easy to get overwhelmed. In fact, we were having a meeting this morning, just really mapping out our nurture strategy. And quickly, you could see everybody's eyes getting bigger because they're like, oh my gosh, we have to build 20 segments and 2 different nurture cadences to personalize it. And like, oh, it's like, okay, how do you break it down to the essential? And so, my advice, number one is focus on your ICP, and then you focus on your key personas, right? What persona is most likely to buy from your product, right? That's kind of like how you stay grounded, going, okay, how do we focus on the essentials? And then the second thing is you got to MVP it, right? You've got to think small. How do we get some data in return? And so an example of that might be, hey, we want to do a broad stroke ABM campaign where we're targeting companies that are investing in AWS services because we are a value add. Well, right away, it's very clear in how you write that copy that you can go speak straight at that value add, right? That's the exciting part about data is you can really latch on to your value proposition and make it super specific. So if you focus on your persona and then you just get that one campaign, I'd focus on the one to try to get some positive data, right? It's all about getting feedback, right? And feedback is data. And yeah, I mean, that's my approach. And I think, if you're a marketing leader out there and you're trying to coach your team, again, try to keep people grounded, because not only do you get flooded and overwhelmed, you could also get overexcited. And then before you know it, you got too much and you can't get off the starting line, right? Like that's so common with marketing teams. So again, just staying grounded. And then, or if you're in demand gen or something, you want to launch something and you want to launch something quickly, again, just go, okay, who's our typical buyer? How big is my segment in our HubSpot? And then what can I do from a broad stroke standpoint using advanced data to do a personalized campaign?
Matt, do you think it's possible? We talked about 6 different data sets, where 3 of them more traditional, the firmographic data, contact data, behavioral. Then we talked about the technology intelligence and technographic data, intent data, and cloud consumption. Do you think organizations can jump, meaning that they might just jump straight to intent data, or they might jump straight to technology intelligence or cloud consumption? Or do you think, or like if somebody is starting, they got to kind of systematically go through those layers of data in order to build the targeting that they want to do and all that stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
So it kind of depends where you're at. And the reality is most companies, if you're a startup or whatever, you have forms and you're capturing, the person's name and their email and their title. That's just standard. So most people have that contact data down. From a firmographic company level, a lot of times that comes with that lead capture, but it's also pretty easy to find. There's a lot of affordable providers. And then when it gets to, tech intelligence like HG, we offer the firmographic. So you'll find a lot of that stuff bundled. And then behavioral, again, is something that happens based on going live. Now, if I was a tech company and a SaaS company, whatever that may be, I think technology intelligence or technographics, whatever you want to call it, is an absolute must-have. Right? I think that it's naive to not do it because it can help you be so personal. So, it's like tactically, there's a lot of providers where you can kind of bundle that together so it's not so intimidating. Now, let's say you have this data. How do you go get off the starting line? Again, I think I kind of look at targeting based on, industry, targeting based on persona. That's pretty basic stuff, 101 ABM, and you need to be able to do that. And then where I want folks to go is to the next step, which is technographic, right? It's still generally broader strokes, right? Like in intent data, I look at it as kind of an optimization on that. So I would address it kind of in that maturity curve.
Interesting. Interesting. Matt, we've talked a lot about kind of targeting, data, personalization. Is there something that maybe I haven't touched on that you think is really important for us to talk about, or we didn't get a chance to speak to in our conversation that you think I should have asked?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just some general advice, right? ABM, right? ABM is this hot keyword, and that's because it's a marketing term for marketers. But the reality is your business needs to be account-based everything, right? Sales has to be account-based, and marketing has to be in tune with those accounts. And CS also, right? You know your customers, and you have to be thinking about it the same way, right? And how you evaluate them from a data standpoint, and then eventually a scoring standpoint, because that keeps the organization aligned, right? I think misalignment is often triggered because marketing and sales are not focused in the same area. And even at the scale of some of the companies I've worked with, where they've got 500 reps, there is a disconnect. And so those companies, they've had to go invest in BI teams to try to bring the data together. So my recommendation, right, especially if you're starting off, smaller organization, 50 employees, maybe under 200, you've got to be account-based. It's not just marketing. Marketing could be more tactical, but in terms of strategically, how are we going to plan our go-to-market? Who's our ICP? What is our TAM? And then moving into what's our SAM, right? Your sellable addressable market, which should be basically your reps, your headcount, and then the size of territories you want. And that's a division of your TAM. And then you can work together on, okay, these are the companies we're going to ABM, targeted to. And this other swath is going to be companies we're going to be do more broad marketing in an effort to obviously engage them.
Got it. No, thanks for that.
Did you miss out on our recent webinar on increasing your share of wallet with ABM and customer marketing? Well, not to worry, you can watch the event on the Xgrowth YouTube channel. And while you're there, you can check out our previous webinars and other events you may have missed. The link will be waiting for you in the pod description below. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions, Matt. I got a couple lined up for you. Let's dive in. First question I have is, what is one resource? And by the way, if it's two, it's fine as well. But what is one resource? It could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is, that has had quite a profound impact on the way that you work or live.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one book that has been really transformative for my leadership career. And that is a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And it's a biography or memoir of Bill Walsh. So Bill Walsh is a famous American football coach in the 80s. And he coached Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and was really innovative in the sport. The sport aside, it's his leadership principles that were just incredible. And really, it boils down to setting a performance standard for your team, treating everybody equally, and really getting the buy-in, saying, hey, this is where we expect to perform. And if you respect that, you'll get the utmost support by me and by your peers. And I just think, it's just something that really, really impacted me.
I love it. That's not an answer I get regularly, so I'm going to definitely check this out.
Yeah.
The Score Takes Care of Itself. Thanks for that. Okay. Question number 2. If you could give only one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Focus on your niche, right? Focus on what makes you uniquely valuable and tell stories around that, right? Don't try to be, especially if you're a startup, like nobody's coming to your blog. Nobody cares, right? You're not out there to go change, convince them that all it is about, XYZ that you're selling, right? Like for us, for example, we help companies with their go-to-market strategies. Like, sure, we need to have content that tells people how to do go-to-market. But that's not going to be how we're going to attract them, right? We've got to create awareness. And so that you've got to, how do you do that, right? Really think about what you're doing and why it is so unique to the market. And you can tell stories around that. So for us, for example, we have this wonderful data set that provides an endless amount of stories. That's unique. Like how, we do these market analysis and market reports, and that really provides that aha moment and helps you tell, a really interesting story across all your channels.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for that. Question 3 is, who are some of the influencers and thought leaders that you follow in the marketing space?
So in the marketing space, I've been a really big fan of Dave Gerhardt's content. So he was part of Drift, and him and Dave Cancel, who is the founder of HubSpot and Drift, had a phenomenal podcast called Seeking Wisdom. And then Dave's since gone on his own. I highly recommend it. He's just a phenomenal interviewer. But what is so cool about the podcast space is you can hear from the people you want to hear from, right? Like, go search for CMO of a company that you respect, or CEO, whatever that is. There might be a podcast, and then you can hear it straight from them. And that's what's so cool. It almost becomes, part of it. Obviously, you want to have great hosts and great production quality, but it's just so cool now that you can go get insights directly from the people that are doing the work.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And it's just so fresh, and, compared to a book that would take like maybe 2 years to get printed and all that stuff. But that's great. It's great advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question I have is, what is something that excites you about B2B today, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the part about B2B that excites me is the consumerization of B2B. And just, it's funny, you think about how formal B2B marketing historically has been and how formal it often still is. But the reality is it's all humans. It's all people, right? At these companies, they're, and it's fun to think about that, right? Go, okay, how am I going to get this person's attention? And it's like, well, most people are on smartphones, they're on iPhones, they're on Instagram, they're on LinkedIn scrolling, right? They're out, they have their hobbies, et cetera. Like, how do you connect with them? And it's fun to think about that. And how do you tell stories to do that and start to challenge the status quo? Something we always talk about, right, is like, why does everything have to be forms? Why does everything have to be PDFs, right? Like, who you really read PDFs anymore? Like, so just challenging the way you think and challenge it from the lens of, from the consumer, right? How do you, when you get excited about something, how do you go consume it? Me personally, I might go podcasts, I might go YouTube, right? Like, there's so much information out there. And I think what I think is cool about B2B, right, is how and when do you take that risk to do those unique things?
Matt, this has been an awesome conversation. There's a lot of insights that you've dropped, and a lot of different points, valuable points on targeting, personalization, and I also love the rapid fire answers as well. So just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and really appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed thinking through these questions, and I hope it's helpful.
Most definitely is. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito, with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shaheen Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week, right here on Growth Colony.